When people commit crimes, nobody knows who they are. Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't know that about them. Very few people would probably say, oh, yeah, that seems like the kind of thing they would do. Particularly female. Females aren't to be totally held responsible for the fact that women tend to, and men tend to give them a free pass in lots of other types of violent behavior, and they don't see it as violent. It becomes absorbed and laundered. Woman can touch herself violently, they know it's violent, absorbed, laundered, that's just the way girls are, going with their life. Professionals do this. Young women on the West Coast are so typically violent and erupt in violence so unpredictably and so forcefully that professional educators and people who work in private teaching and boarding schools consider it normal as part of the development of females on the West Coast of Canada. Because they're under so much stress. If this were happening to boys, they would say, oh, we should rape those boys. They're going to be rapists. The most sexually uninhibited people when I was in high school, granted people behave very differently, different ways, were female. Always. Throughout my life. The most sexually inhibited people, female, gay, and bi. Lesbians, not so much. Female, gay, and bi. Lesbians are, I think, I consider like a notch above most sexes and sexual orientations. I find if you're a lesbian, you know you're a lesbian, you're a proud, none of my business kind of lesbian or whatever you are, lesbians are the best people. They're the best kinds of people. Like, you'd be lucky to be a lesbian. There's nothing to be lost not wanting to fuck men, for sure. No doubt about it. And I feel the same way about women. I'm not gay, but let's make more lesbians. It's a good example of, even if you saw non-heterosexual development as eccentric or remarkable in any way, added to which you could say about any sexual orientation, it has to cope with its environment. People are versatile, our minds are plastic, the other. That lesbian is among the better coping systems in so much as everyone's sexual orientation has to double as a coping system. And depending on how it's doubled as a coping system and how well that's going and the choices that have been made even before you're born, yes, depending on any sexual orientation, you could be under some conditions violent. You might need to be violent, you might not need to be violent, you might be surrounded by violence to which you would have to be violent. So violence is just a part of the world, essentially, before it becomes a part of you. Or it becomes something that's a part of your relationships. Now, people say that, lesbian relationships in certain parts of the world have a high incidence of domestic abuse. Well, how many lesbians are there compared to everyone else? Right? You think about that. Right? There's not a lot of lesbian movies, lesbian books. But I would argue that everything with Tom Cruise is a lesbian movie, and I imagine there are a lot of lesbians who live very happy, satisfying lives. Let the world be constructed for you. Really. I find lesbians to be the last kind of female, like beyond that of the most abstract level, that I would say I admire at an idealist level. Like the ideal woman. I don't see the ideal woman as someone who wants to have sex with me. I see the ideal woman who's a strong, principled human being that has found love, if they wish, in a way that provides for their safety and that of their loved ones and the world, in so much as we all need to make ourselves safe and take an interest in the safety of ourselves and others. Lesbianism seems, all things considered, the best way to go. If you were a female, I would say I would recommend being a lesbian. Whether you want to be a feminist or this or whatever type of dyke you want to be. When I see dykey behavior, when I see women who are bitchy and who are malevolent or sadistic and ill-equipped to deal with people the way I would think is ethical or appropriate, person's a lesbian or that person's a dyke. It's that way that a sexual orientation can double as a pejorative and shouldn't, in so much as now I'm saying they make me upset to think that any orientation they are has anything to do with their behavior, that they feel such a right or an entitlement in behaving the way they do. It's like they don't have any shame. It makes me angry. It makes me want to lash out at them. And sometimes maybe they're heterosexual. Sometimes it seems like maybe they're bi or something about them looks a little dykey. And I think, fuck you, I don't like it. But most of the lesbians I meet, and if they're working in a professional capacity, I would say, depending on what I've studied about that profession, it helps to induce that kind of behavior and doesn't prohibit it enough. And humans need that. Lesbians, right? You need an environment that's clear about boundaries and how you're going to operate with other people. And a lot of industries don't do that. So you might see someone who's gay or lesbian doing something. It's like, also, they're there to do what they're told, and under stress, they will do what they can get away with sometimes, no matter who they are. And it's not going to make them or who you think they are look very good. And you say, oh, it's their job at that point. It's an occupational hazard. It's not because they're gay or straight but you can't help in your mind sometimes. Like, I can think of people I've known. I know, when I've been attacked by gay people, or I've been attacked by bisexuals, or women who might not have been sure what they were, and they gave off women sometimes give off a very passive energy, and you think, I remember being on a field trip for my art history class in college, and I ended up being on this bus with this woman, and we were talking, and she was about my age, and I wasn't like overly attracted to her, so much as we had like what I considered an okay kind of conversation, and looked at some paintings, and I thought we had a lunch period. I said, do you want to go for coffee? And I wouldn't tell you that my intentions were totally pure and that I was a heterosexual male, and I was certainly open to get to know her better. I didn't know where that would go or whatever, and she just became violently angry and stormed away. So I've met women like that in college. I don't think they were really sure what they were, And young women, in many cases, can get violently angry just when they're uncertain about how they feel at all. It's a common problem in the Western white world. I take issue with everyone who's violent with me. Certainly she made her boundaries clear, but it's just interesting that was probably the only time I ever asked a woman to have coffee with me, ever. And I get sexually assaulted by women so often. I think, do you really know who you were talking to? Like, women have come up to me and said they feel safe around me, which is not always good for me, because those women, once a woman expresses that she feels safe to you, the assumption, of course, is that you should be safe with her. I've met sexual predators who feign fear when they see me. They come out of a tree and like, oh, and then immediately come up to me and sexually assault me, because they're the only ones who can be afraid. Once their fear is portrayed and they lower then apparently they can do anything with me. If they feel safe, I should feel safe, is what women learn. If the woman's safe, the man should be safe, because women don't do anything to men. Men are always safe. We can do anything to them because they always get to be safe. They're supposed to make us feel safe. We don't make them feel safe. Right? No white female teacher goes to school and thinks, I hope my students feel safe around me. It's assumed. It's a glow of sainthood as they walk around. My kindergarten teacher showed us her pussy. The female secretary, when I was 5 years old, showed her pussy to my friend and was destroying his family in the process. Right? She was a horny prostitute. Like, white women throw their pussies into situations and dynamics with men, women, and children all the time. It factors in, it factors in, it factors in, it factors in. Right? Partly because they're animals, partly because the world caters to it, partly because there's oppression, partly because their biochemical system has grown in different types of economic pluralities and plutocracies and the like. And we can't always anticipate what any individual is going to do with their sexual organs, or how it's going to affect, or how it comes to bear upon the environment, and what types of seemingly violent or evidently violent potentials may arise without, having to be too critical about a given female. It's all so confusing, right? But if you're in a war, people are going to get killed. And if you're in an economic oppression, men and women are going to make their genitalia a part of your life in ways that you don't like. We are animals after all, but we're not allowed to be animals. And so it just comes out discreetly, so she just had to show us her pussy, right? It just comes out. It's like, now she's dominant, right? The only class I was in high school, or sort of elementary school, that seemed dominated by males was kindergarten. And then they all got spread out and dispersed. It's weird because Miss Lamar never gave me one-on-one instruction. I remember all I learned in kindergarten was to spell my name, and I did it all by myself. My brother actually taught me the alphabet, not a teacher. So hilarious. And yet Miss Lamar / Miss Lawrence had me for what? 200 days of the year when I was between 5 and 6 years of age. Miss Rain had me for another 200 and whatever, 30, 260 days. Didn't teach me the alphabet. Never taught us the alphabet at all. What the fuck is their job? I was a good reader because I taught myself how to read, not because she taught me how to read. And they give you these stupid stories, and the rat and the cat up the hill where they went, and they came down, and they had a hat that was on a mat. What I liked about it, remember, is that they really kept their vocabulary to 3-letter words. That's pretty smart. Hat, mat, dad, mom, hit, cat, dog, ball. Ooh, a 4-letter word. And as I was learning the English language, at least to read it, that was pretty helpful. I remember being really appreciative that the words were all 3-letter words because I could just get used to the syntax of 3-letter words. And then you don't have to focus on the letters. You can focus on the syntax of how the words are oriented. And you don't have to worry about, seeing words you don't know. When I was young, the difference between me and a lot of students, a lot of people I've met, I was never nervous about not knowing how to pronounce a word. I was pretty good at pronouncing them, for one, and I never really had a problem not knowing what they meant. Because you'll notice in books that a word never appears where it doesn't appear in some kind of context. A word is being used for a reason. And so you can build on that and kind of get a sense of what it means. If I said that an ass was a pejorative for the sun, and you didn't know what pejorative meant, what would you think? Well, it's something that has more negative connotations than one might like, that stands in for a correct signifying term for something that may be prone to negative attention. So if I called a woman a dyke, I'd be giving her negative attention. I don't like her. It's like, but that's what she is, isn't she? Isn't she a dyke? But if another lesbian said, hey, this is my beautiful girlfriend, she's an awesome dyke, it'd be different because of what's inside the word. A black person uses the N-word, say, hey, yo, my something or other, right? And it's like, oh, that's cool. But if I said, hey, come over here, not the same, right? Not the same. Why? It teaches us about what's in the words. I don't have black in my blood, so I can't put black into that word. It doesn't belong. I don't belong intoning it. Because wrong things come out of me as a white person. And also because of what white people have done in the world. We don't have the purity to say that word. It convicts us of racism. We can't say that word. Black people say, you can't say that word. You're not good at saying it. I feel the same way when white people use my name. I can't stand it when they use my name. What? I can't stand it. I say to my mom, the worst people use my first name, Landon. I can't stand the way most women say my name. Hate it. Hate it. Why? The only good thing about it is it tells me who they are. I don't use a woman's name. If I see you once or twice a year, I'm not really going to use your name. If we had a really good conversation and we'd establish good, mutually safe boundaries that have nothing to do with sex. And you've got a boyfriend, or you're married, and I'm whatever I am, and we talk about books, or we talk about this, or, maybe, hey, Landon, or Mr. Seeley, or something would do. But most guys I meet out here, it's like, yo, hey. And yet, the one time a woman said to me, hey, you, again, she was using it as a pejorative, not really the right use of the word, but it intoned something negative about me. She purposely did not use my name. So when white women are using it, when they're not using it, crap comes across. The only good thing about it is that the crap comes across. I go, oh, you're crap. You have an agenda. Something you can learn about people, and we all can, whether you've learned it or not, or you learn it again and again, is that anyone who in an intellectual sense, or you take a snap, or you do an audio, and you're thinking socially, which is not always right, oh, they sound nice. Hey, how are you? Hey. But you don't feel right around them. I'm like, don't feel right, don't feel right, don't feel right. And there's so many people in my life, don't feel right, don't feel right. And if I'm lucky, sometimes years later, I'll find out why I didn't feel right. They were a closet heroin dealer, or they were a prostitute, or, it's just like, holy fuck, something didn't feel right, right? And so, but you might think as you're talking to someone, but they're nice, and they're just a nice white woman, or, they say your name nicely. Doesn't mean anything to me. I listen to this, I listen to my mind, I listen to my body, and it's like, even like a day after, or 2 days after, I think this one female, I think it was 2 days ago, still in my ethereal field. Whereas, like, you see people, I know when they're not thinking in a bad way toward me, because I can see them in my mind, and it's just, my heart is just smiling. Oh, I like that person. You like people who like you the way you want to be liked. You don't like people who like you in a way you don't want to be liked. I might say, hey, I really like you, John, but you don't feel right about what I mean when I say I like you, John. Maybe I want to mount you. And I think that's perfectly healthy, because, John, you're one good-looking dude. And you don't like that. It gives you the heebie-jeebies. And you can feel that. Say, hey, John. If you're a girl, and I've been masturbating to you, like, for 300 days of the last year, and I'm like, hey, Vanessa, how's it going? How are you going to feel? It's going to creep you the fuck out. You're going to go home and shower 3 times a day for a week, right? But it's not illegal. You just, like, you tell your boyfriend, like, fuck him, I hate that guy. And he'd have to be like, don't ever talk to my girlfriend again, because you made her feel like, basically she needs to use me to punch the fuck out of you. How do you think about that? Oh, okay. So women, men, we need protection from people's, it's called other-directed energy. Some people say bad intentions. That's not really enough. I like other-directed energy, because people don't have to have bad intentions. Like, I'm going to fuck your girlfriend. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha. I'm going to your potluck, and I'm going to take her in the bathroom and mount her. It might just be a general sense, like, I think you and my girlfriend, your girlfriend, I mean, we just have a nice thing going, like, I had coffee with her on your couch one day when you were at work, and we just had this connection. And I start coming by your house once or twice a week to hang out with you and your girlfriend, and every now and then you have to pop out to, see one of your clients, and it's like, it's okay, I'll keep her company. And we're warming up to each other. So, things just happen around people. They just let things go. We have to regulate each other, right? Of course, a good friend wouldn't do that, and a good girlfriend wouldn't let that happen, and a good boyfriend would let, you regulate, but because we're animals. And maybe people have relationships where it's okay to flirt. You trust each other. I don't really use that word trust. I don't think it's a good thing, but people say, like, oh, I trust my girlfriend, she can flirt. I flirt when I'm at work. People flirt with me. It's nothing. It's their way of saying, like, under the right circumstances, I would let you put your erect penis into my vaginal opening. But, just for the fun of it. It's like, what? What is that? Like, hey, Landon, you're a nice man, and I can imagine putting your cock in my mouth. I'd like your hands to rub my nipples into tight little peaks, and then I want you to rub your groin against my panties and make me wet. That would be great. But, Not appropriate in the moment, but in some fantastical sense, that could possibly be one day. Like, that's human sexuality. That's the fantasy level of the human animal. And luckily, I don't have to be around. I don't work in an office. I don't work in a school. You would say, I don't want you to teach your daughter's little league baseball team. It's like, not that guy. And I can tell you, like in a clinical range, men and women get excited by anything and everyone that is human. If they're cute, if they're young, if they've got a nice ass, if they got a nice arms. Women might say, "Oh no, I just think he's cute because he's just a nice man and he's got nice eyes." You know, women have these way of but it means they want to fuck, right? It means there's some sort of fucky potential in there. You know, it's always there. But women lie to themselves. Like, they don't just say, "Oh yeah, I'd like to fuck him," you know, and then you'd say, "Oh, you're a disgusting woman," which of course is what I would say. I prefer the nice eyes, but it's like when women like men, they're seeing men sexually, right? Right, and even if you're not seeing them sexually, the fact that any part of them on TV appeals to you is not innocuous, right? If you like a guy, he's a guy that you like. He's not a girl that you like. If you like a character, it relates to, like, men have a place in your life and girls have a place in your life. And there's a girl, there's a 16-year-old girl on this show, and I think she's quite nice. Ever seen her butt? It's I'll notice the size of their butts changing. Riding horses, which means like they're just basically doing this in the saddle. It's like, God, I mean, trade the horse for my hard cock, and you've got yourself a pretty interesting situation, right? And men think that way. Your hips are gyrating and moving. That means things are going on down there. You're ready. You're ready to start shedding that orgasmic elasticity until my balls feel adequately emptied of their seed, their hot molten ropes of pure desire for your unearthly and earthly female flesh, ass, tits, thighs, mouth, and the wonderful bouquet of sex essence that is you, and all the wonderful things that could come from that, literally, figuratively. That's how people think about each other as animals, right? It's subconscious. So if you're watching TV with your boyfriend and there's like an 8-year-old girl and he's like, "Hey, she's cute," what do you really think he's saying? I had friends when I was 9 or 10 who would say about someone's sister who was 10 years old, like, "Oh, she'll be nice to fuck when she gets older. You can see how her ass is developing." And I didn't. These children are saying this to me. And it's like, but I'm not innocuous. I'm going, okay, I can kind of see that. I think that's gross. Like one of my friend's younger sisters. Oh yeah, she's going to be really hot when she's older. She's going to be someone you could really mount. Right? Kind of gross, right? But as animals, you would start to. I don't think it's normal necessarily, but it's effectively normal or ostensibly normal because of the conditions. Like, you're going to school, you're banged up with men, women, children, your parents are divorced, you're lonely, you're scared, you're doing everything you're told, but it's not enough to make you feel perfectly secure. In fact, that lack of security is what's supposed to drive you to perform and blossom as an economic soul. And lo and behold, not everybody takes to it. And so things come out. Maybe it really, yes, that's sex, it's sexually inappropriate, or it's also a stress response. And it's provocative, like, "Oh, okay, right on, Jude. Yeah, she's got quite the vagina going on there." And it was at an age where I wasn't really fully, like, I still don't know, like, what role sex should play in my life. And to look back, what was her name? I don't even know her name. Rebecca. I never found her particularly attractive. In fact, her and her brother were very on the side of kind of very dykey, both of them. Come from a redneck family. Their father was a prison officer. In fact, I had a few prison guards around me. And he used to watch cartoons all day. I went to their house and he played cartoons and video games. Now, that might not seem that odd today in the 21st century, but it was odd for me then. And he also introduced him to cartoon porn. And he had watched things with Smurfette, who had a vagina. And I remember that kind of turned me on, which is strange. There's bugs here. It means it's getting warm. That kind of turned me on a bit. I'm not sure if I masturbated thinking about Smurfette, but I mean, Smurfette is kind of an okay looking Smurf, right? And she has feminine wiles. She brushes her hair, and ostensibly on some level, she's brushing her hair because she wants some guy to love her and see this beautiful being, and along with which that beautiful being will get to fuck her. Right? I mean, women are always getting ready to be married or find a guy. Like, this is unfortunately a part of the motifs of a lot of entertainment. And yes, it's, they're independent, they go get jobs, save the world, and all that stuff too. And you'd say they're being like men, which is in a sense still being a bit sexist because they're just being like women. They're women being like women. Women can do anything, men can do anything. If you do this, you're being a woman. If you do that, you're being a woman. If you're an astronaut, you're being an astronaut. Okay, you're a female astronaut. He's a male astronaut, but you're an astronaut. You're a woman doing what a woman can do. You're a man doing, and men and women want this parity. But I think it'll always be, in some sense, when a woman does something that a woman is doing. And I think we can have discussions about, how women's roles have changed and how maybe women emulating the roles played out for men in history is not necessarily the be-all and end-all of being liberated from male oppression. And you would say, well, what else is there? That's Gloria Steinem, basically. The whole summation of Gloria Steinem, who helped start the feminist industry, is that whatever women need to do that they haven't been doing, they should be allowed to be like men, at the very least. If men, can do this to succeed and have sex with their bosses to succeed, women should have sex. If their bosses want to have sex with them, they should have sex right back to them. If that boss in the past normally would just touch your breasts and make you feel really scared, now you should just go into his office and hop on his dick and demand a raise. It's completely the opposite, right? Throw it back at them. Rape them back. Rape them first. And it'll be legal because of oppression, because you're really just doing what the man's world has defined as the gold standard of whatever you can do on those circumstances to get yours. And why shouldn't you? Men have been doing it forever, And we say, yay. And I just, that hits me a few different ways. It's an unfortunate world we live in that, one way or the other, that women have to be treated this way, or at least it gives them something to do. You might say, I don't think most women really think that way, but I think at a broad scale, a lot of women say that's a fairly accurate look at, what you're describing is that women getting to do more things, and along the way, playing men's game back at them, whether they want to be particularly precocious sexually or not. I would say that in general, men and women in every sexual orientation has been invited by the world at large to loosen their sexual inhibitions, more or less, under one situation, like just the idea of spring break, for instance, or the Christmas, when children are invited to get excited, consume sugar, and sit on a strange man's lap. How is that not sexual? Excitement is sexual. Excitement is not what you want in animals, right? If an animal's excited, they could fuck someone or kill someone. You don't want your dog to be excited. You want, calm, joyful, restful, exploratory, submissive, happy, healthy, sound, happy to be alive. That's all great, but excited, not so much. Alcohol makes you excited. Or when you get excited on alcohol, there's different types of excitation and depression that are taking place in the brain and the hormonal system. It's a very complex and really quite a sick thing to do to yourself. It's an embalming fluid. I was watching a show, 2.5 Men, and I hadn't watched it for a while. In the course of 2 or 3 episodes, I said to my mom, she didn't quite hear me, but in 2 or 3 episodes, in ways that were more plot evident and not. In other words, something happened that clearly would make that person look that way. And in other ways, men and women in the plot looked dead. They looked like they were dead. And somehow their sex life led them to looking like they were dead. It was fascinating. The makeup was done like they were dead, compared to the vivid look of the other character. So it was like the character who's happy is living, and the character who's sad is though dead. Something has died. And at the end of the entire series, the main character, Charlie Sheen, dies. He becomes publicly defamed. He gets extraordinarily drunk and stoned and makes a lot of public comments that get him fired. His professional associations die, and his character died. Right? And then comes back to life, I guess, and gets killed again. This idea of watching a show and a character getting killed off, and how they'll say, for instance, that the actor, just didn't want to renew their contract. 10 years, is a lot to be one person. They needed to do other things. But it's never the case. It's always planned. It's built right into the show. The hero has to die. He's going to have to pay at some point. In fact, Charlie Sheen, along the show, there's a lot of lines saying, wow, you really get away with a lot. You're a lucky bastard. Well, it's like, are you a natural force of evil or do you intend evil? And who knows? And it's like, wow, that's there's some philosophical things. Is he a psychopath, or is he a misogynistic enough man to survive women? And the women he meets, play it back at him, and some of them are better, and some of them have other morbid repercussions at trying to be Charlie's kind of woman, and either misinterpret Charlie and they really lose, or they know exactly who Charlie is and they really enjoy fucking him. Some of whom actually manage to fuck him, a witch who almost kills him and takes all of his semen, rape him 10 times over one night. Charlie is happy to the point of near death, and the only person who stops it is his mother, who's the high witch of that council. Think about this. This is all on daytime or evening television, primetime television, for years, right? You look at Friends. Chandler gets raped. Did you know that Chandler is raped in one episode of Friends? And his friend Buddy, or Joey, sorry, his buddy Joey, tells him, hey, you're lucky to have sex. And he's like, oh, okay. And all this pain, Joey's like his psychiatrist. Hey, you got to have sex, right? You're a dude. Like, you like vaginas, right? It's like, all right, you got to have sex. Sure, she raped you, but you got to have sex, didn't you? And so Joey turns rape into sex and says it's okay because it's really not rape, it's sex. It's a different word, a different neurolinguistic. You're a guy, you're supposed to like getting your dick in a pussy. It doesn't matter how or why it happened or what you feel like after. Sex is just about having sex. Now think about that. Think of how that makes you feel. Then reverse the genders. Okay? Well, something doesn't want me to talk. Hold it. Yeah. Then reverse the genders. So it's a man who tricks a woman into having sex with him under a false pretext. And she's horrified. And she's talking to her female friend, who loves to sleep around, and says, hey, Veronica, you got dick, didn't you? Yeah, but I got pregnant from it, and he lied to me, and it was like angry revenge sex. Oh, but you got dick, didn't you? And your children will grow up, and they'll get dick and pussy, and that's what it's all about. It's a total disconnect. When you have sex, nothing else matters but having sex. What stays in the